It's great to welcome back to the program attorney Mark Bankston, who's a partner at Farrow and Ball. And the latest topic, you're always up to interesting things. I don't know if you seek these out or if they find you, but this time it's you are involved in California Governor Gavin Newsom's $787 million defamation lawsuit against Fox News. We covered this on the show when it was filed. It relates to this phone call that Donald Trump said he had with Gavin Newsom in the last day, which Gavin Newsom said that call was 3.5 days ago, the subject of which was not what Donald Trump claimed it to be. Jesse Waters then went on TV, and you'll tell us exactly what he said, but essentially made the case that it is Gavin Newsom who's making this thing up at the end of the day.
That's exactly right. And he flat out said, "Why is Gavin Newsom lying?" And it's interesting because a lot of the cases that I've done um, involve media outlets where I felt like they acted recklessly, where if they had done their job properly, they would have discovered the truth. And by acting recklessly, they violated the law. This case is different because it's Fox, and it follows the same pattern. It's not that they acted recklessly and should have discovered the truth. The reality was they knew the truth and they fabricated and manufactured a completely different version for no other purpose but to carry the president's water. And this is something, of course, we see from Fox time and time again.
What made this so? You're talking about they knew what the truth was, they went with something different, they knew what they were doing. Still, though, and maybe this will help us understand it, what makes this rise to the level of defamation in your eyes? Obviously, this has not yet. We need to see what the outcome of the case is, but in your eyes, why do you believe that this is more then, oh, we have an agenda, we have a bias, and sometimes we selectively include or don't certain claims. Like, why is this defamation?
It's a little bit different. And I think just some background, the governor of just like all of us watched that Dominion case and saw the emails that came out of that case. And what we saw was a news organization that wasn't trying to put a spin on things or wasn't trying to put their thumb on the scale. What they had was journalists who were privately acknowledging that the facts that they were reporting were not true. And they were almost, mocking the entire process behind the scenes. And that's what's really upset the governor is to see that case go forward, to see Fox have to pay that enormous amount in settlement that should have acted as a deterrent. And what do we see that is still going on is that Fox is willing to lie to carry the president's water. And it raises the question of exactly what is Fox? Is it a media organization or is it a multi-billion-dollar propaganda machine? Because in this specific case, the president's office had provided them with the actual evidence that showed that actually that phone call that President Trump said happened did not happen. And they knew for a fact that Governor Newsom was telling the truth. But they have to continue to carry the president's water, so they had to create this story to smear the governor to say that he was a liar. And when that happens in the wake of the Dominion suit, when we've already seen them do the same behavior before, he just wasn't allowed to let that happen. I mean, he feels a great responsibility here that if he becomes the next target, he's got to step up because his silence will allow them to keep doing this.
Now, we're now zooming out a little bit into how the law works, which I think is useful because we're seeing a lot of cases like this in sort of different shapes and forms. Does does Gavin Newsom need to prove that he was materially harmed by the lie in order to succeed in this matter?
Interestingly enough, no, he doesn't. There's two kinds of defamation. There's traditional defamation, which is somebody says something that's harmful about you, that is a derogatory thing that is false. But there's another class of defamation known as defamation per se. And these are certain statements that, by their very nature, are just understood to be damaging. These include accusations that somebody was engaged in criminal conduct, accusations that they are deficient in their profession, and importantly here, accusations that somebody is a liar. And you cannot, that's a cornerstone of defamation law. If you know that someone isn't lying and you say that they are, that is defamatory. Because in other words, this was done against the backdrop of a nation in a moment of crisis, looking at two political leaders and trying to judge their veracity. See which one of these guys is an honest and true dealer. And Fox wanted to make sure its audience knew that they didn't have to discover the truth, that it was their own president who was lying to them. So they concocted this story. And so in reality, from the law standpoint, Governor Newsom doesn't have to show actual damages. This can be
Hmm.
completely punitive. But the reality is that when Fox airs that to millions of people, there's no question at all that that has reputational damage. And that's probably nowhere more acute than it is in the political environment. And normally, a political leader would have a hard time bringing this kind of suit because they'd have to prove it was said with knowledge that it was actually false. But again, given the facts of this case, that's not a challenge here.
One, I guess you would call it a tactic that has sometimes been used over the last 5 years by lawyers defending Fox News is when convenient, they will go the route of, and I'm paraphrasing, I don't know that this is exactly how they phrase it legally, but this is someone giving an opinion and not to be interpreted as a news report per se, right? And I think
Yes.
that this was used with Tucker Carlson in one. These are hyperbolic, exaggerated opinions for entertainment. This is not a news report where every word comports with the literal facts. However, it was that they worded it, and I'm sure you know better than I do. Is that potentially a viable defense technique for Fox in this scenario?
I don't see it here. It was very well featured in a former lawsuit involving Tucker Carlson. And Tucker's show follows a somewhat strange format. A lot of his talking is sort of a stream of consciousness rant. It's formulated in such a way that it wears its opinion status on its sleeve. And the thing about Tucker's replacement, Jesse Waters, this individual that they thought they would put stick into his time slot, is he operates much more like a standard news show.
Mm.
And there is plenty of language used in that broadcast, which is communicating to its viewers that Fox is going to get to the bottom of what is really happening.
Ah,
And because they are signaling cues to their viewers that we are informing you rather than having a discussion about political values or Tucker Carlson's preferences for certain policies. This is actually a reporting of live contemporaneous events. And so, under this analysis, there's really no question that any reasonable viewer watching this would have taken this as a statement of fact that Governor Newsom was wrong, that President Trump had brought the receipts and then had proven him wrong. And this was in many ways just a straight news report. And it's that kind of defamation that's the most insidious is when you have an organization telling you, I'm an honest broker, I'm going to tell you what really happened, and then just turns around and lies to you. That is the sort of the damage that we need to prevent.
I'm curious, and this is zooming out a little bit, and this doesn't necessarily apply to what Jesse Waters said because he didn't use this sort of language I'm about to propose. But one of the things I try to do is if I am reporting or analyzing or opining about something that has been reported by someone else, which is almost always the case, right? Because I'm doing analysis and commentary, I'm not doing original news reporting. I will make an effort to say, this has been alleged or as
Correct.
reported by. And my layperson's belief is that when I do that, I'm just making a sort of disclaimer that I am giving my opinion based on my assessment that a report is true. Of course, if the report is untrue, my opinion would have to be revised. But it's sort of like the way I couch it. If it's possible that an outrageous report isn't true, do those types of statements generally actually have legal value?
Yes, yes, they do. And in several states, there's actually statutes on the book that says a media organization like yours isn't liable for the reporting or statements made by a third party if you're just reporting that those statements were made.
Mm.
Sometimes that an allegation has been made is itself newsworthy, right? And we should have the freedom to report on those kinds of things. But when you have a news organization who is saying that it's their own original reporting, that's a very different thing. So I do think it's important for people like you in independent media to always be upfront with their viewers about where their information is coming from, about which parts of the program are meant to communicate facts and which are meant to communicate opinions. I think that kind of language is not only legally important, but also socially and culturally helpful, right? It's the right thing to do. But what we see at Fox is a very different formula. And we don't see those disclaimers to the extent that they exist are actually contradictory and confusing. And it leads to a situation where the entire Fox audience is just under a fire hose of false information being presented as though it is factual hard news. And that again is typified by this case.
One of the really interesting, I mean, it's, I don't know if it's evil or evil genius, but one of the things we would often see when Tucker Carlson still had his show on Fox News is that in a clearly opinionated way on his nighttime show, Tucker would give some outrageous conspiracy theory or, inside job for the January 6th riots or this sort of thing. It's very clearly an opinion. The next morning, Fox and Friends would report about the fact that Tucker gave this opinion. And it was a very interesting blurring
Yes.
because, listen, I get it. Tucker's opinion was on his opinion show. Fox and Friends reported on the fact that Tucker said this. Everything is true, but it really blurs the lines as to what is Fox and Friends trying to communicate when they do that.
It's exactly right. Well, in this case, you have where John Roberts also did contemporaneous reporting on the
Yeah.
same thing. And so you have this blending of the two departments. Now, I will say that Tucker Carlson, you may be right to use the phrase evil genius. He was a very sophisticated person in how to use the sort of intricacies of language in order to sort of shroud himself and hide behind certain things in defamation law. Jesse Waters is not as skillful of a rhetorical force as Tucker Carlson.
No,
And
that
he
certainly
went
seems to be the case.
right. He went right over the line. And when you he had we know from now from investigating this case, Jesse Waters and his producers had in their possession the actual information here. And so for them to go forward as they did so clumsily is actually what surprises me. And it's also a surprise to me, the governor has offered Fox a chance to apologize for all of this.
Yeah.
It's just to come out and say, hey, look, we gave the false information. We had the right information, we gave it false, and we're sorry about that. And they could avoid this entire mess. And it remains to be seen if they're going to do that. But for the moment, right now, we're just charging full speed ahead.
So in terms of the demand, 787 million, I assume that that's a reference to the Dominion lawsuit and the award there. And I know that lawyers are often cagey about speaking about this stuff while this is going on, but what is really the point here? I mean, is it to collect 787 million minus legal fees for Gavin Newsom personally? Is the idea here, what would you accept less? Is the idea not even really this but something else? Like, what's the goal here?
Well, in terms of the award itself, any monies recovered from Fox that are paid on the benefit of Governor Newsom for this lawsuit, he is going to donate those to charity.
Okay,
This is not about the monetary enrichment of the governor, who does not need that. That is not his concern whatsoever.
got it.
The actual concern is to inflict the right amount of monetary compensation on Fox that will act as a deterrent, because apparently first round wasn't enough. And so that number, you are correct, was chosen in our pleadings as a symbolic value of this is the deterrence value of these claims. Yet at the same time, it may very well undersell the amount of damage that Fox is doing. And so for that reason, look, when damages are calculated at trial, it's not a matter of what the plaintiff puts in their complaint. It's the matter of what 12 citizens of that community decide to do. And so the amounts of damages will be left in the hands of that jury. And that money will be put to good use in a charitable way. But it is hoped that that money can be taken from Fox so that they can understand that this is a cost of doing business. If this is how you're going to operate, then these costs are there. And it wasn't just a one-off fluke with Dominion. It wasn't just that one thing. Now you're out from under it. You can keep operating the same way. Governor Newsom wants to send the message that if Fox intends to keep operating this way, it'll face suit after suit after suit. And that's why there needs to be some sort of thematic continuity between this and the Dominion suit. We're arguing the exact same thing, and so if this keeps happening, that's what he will do. Is he was very proud to step up into this role when they made him the latest target.
How long do you think this all will take?
That's a really hard question. I personally, if I was dealing with a rational entity, I would hope that it would be wrapped up in a month or two and everybody would go off on their separate ways. But that's not how I anticipate this going down.
And
Um,
that would only be if there were to be a settlement,
a
right?
settlement and apology and all of
Yeah.
that. Exactly, right? And I'm not holding my breath for that. I mean, I'd like Fox to come to its senses, but we will see about that. Our team is prepared to take this to long haul, and some of these defamation cases can sometimes take 2, 3 years, something like that. In the meantime, though, of course, as the suit goes on, there will be discovery in this lawsuit, and so we're going to be learning a lot more about how Fox is operating in the post-Dominion environment. And we expect those revelations to be just as disturbing as they were in that suit.
Yeah, I think that there is the potential here that in discovery, communications may come out about what was happening behind the scenes as the phone call fiasco was developing, which could be explosive to say the least. And that those revelations would certainly have value in sort of exposing the way that Fox may be operating.
That's sort of the feeling that we've all had about the Dominion suit itself too, is when those emails came out, that was an important thing to add to the historical record, right? And the governor has said about the suit that history is being written on the spot. And forces like Fox contribute to that. And so history has to be correct. And this era in which we have a president who lies with such alarming regularity that we've all just kind of grown used to it. There needs to be a complete record of exactly how this happened and who was responsible. And it's not just all on Trump. It is on the powerful forces that surround him, including this multi-billion-dollar media enterprise.
Well, we're going to follow it. It may be 2 months, it may be 2 years. Hopefully, not much longer than that. We've been speaking with attorney Mark Bankston, partner at Farrow and Ball. Always good having you on, Mark. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, David.